Bible teaches us that life is better with Jesus, period. That life is better with Jesus. So during this series, we're looking at 5 areas that we can, if we can find better in, we can introduce people to the author of better. Today, we're going to be looking at what it means to be better financially. And so I just want to, from the very beginning, I want to give just a little bit of a disclaimer. If this is your first time here, or if you're new here and you're thinking, oh, great, I came on Money Sunday, right? Right? Oh, man, I picked a bad one to come. No, I'm really glad that you're here. Because if you're considering whether Shiloh could be your church home or not, this is a really important conversation to be a part of. And if you call Shiloh your church home, this is a really important conversation for you to be a part of. Jesus said, where your treasure is, there your heart is also. And so today we're going to have an open and honest conversation about what better financially looks like. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we passed out commitment cards. And if you haven't gotten your commitment card yet, they're there in the back of the room. You can also get online and give those. And by the way, you can give online if you would like to. But our commitment cards are available to you, and we've been asking you to ask the question, what would it look like for you to make a financial commitment to Jesus through Shiloh in 2018 in a way that makes God smile? What does that look like to you? How do you put your treasure where your heart is? And the more I've gotten to think about this church being better financially, the more excited I get. Because remember, this entire idea about be better is designed for us to connect with our not yet here friends in an area where they feel some need, and to be able to help teach and train and introduce people to the author of better. And when I think about better financially, I think that this church is uniquely and strategically located in a place where we can teach what it looks like to be better financially. We have 6 categories that kind of define what better financially look like for us. And the first one is about debt. I love being a part of a church that has 0 debt. I can't tell you how many pastors I talk to who say, we'd love to do this or we'd love to do that, but we can't because we have so much debt. This church truly understands the danger of debt and that the borrower is slave to the lender. And so we have something to teach when it comes to better financially in a world that just says charge it, right? We know something about investing. We have an endowment team here at this church that does some amazing work. They take some of the resources that we have been given, they invest them in stock markets and CDs and in investments in ways that allows those to grow exponentially, creating resources to be able to be used outside of the offering plate in a way that really blesses our community. And not only does our endowment team raise funds for our church, but they've also taken some time to offer training opportunities to many of you to get a will made or learn about how simple investing or learn how to get out of debt and those types of things, to teach you some of the tricks of the trade that they've learned over the years. So we have something to offer our neighbors when it comes to better financially. Giving is a major part of what it means to be better financially. And we've talked here a number of times that better financially is not about what you keep, but it's about what you give. Now, we're going to come back to that one, so hold on to that one, because that one's a really important one. When it comes to work, I love this church. If you were here this weekend and you saw some of our United Methodist women just busting their tails, this room was filled like you can't believe with an assortment of treasures, right, that were made available to the community. They worked all week long, late into the night, preparing for this so that they have resources to put into mission and ministry here in the world. That's what work looks like. I love that this church understands that in order for us to be connected with our community, we've got to be tutoring over at Delhi Middle School, or we've got to be inviting St. Joe's Orphanage in and providing opportunities for them. This church truly understands that faith is not just an intellectual thing, but you've got to work at it. And so we've got something to teach. We also know a little something about contentment. It's a tricky word. Contentment doesn't mean settling for second best, but contentment means finding joy in your current circumstances, but still looking to what God has planned for in your future. And I've been meeting over the last several months with our 200th anniversary celebration planning team. Next year is our 200th anniversary of Shiloh Church. Church, that's huge. 200 years in a world where 4,000 churches close every year. This church has had 200 years of staying power and mission and ministry in this community. Know why? Because I think we have learned the secret of contentment, finding joy in our current circumstances, but looking forward to what God has planned for us in the future. We also understand that it all belongs to God. Everything we have, worship God. We worship Christ, not capitalism, right? At the end of the day, it is about our relationship with Jesus, not about the money in our pockets. And that even if we've been blessed enough to collect a few things for ourselves, we still recognize that all of that belongs to God. Deuteronomy chapter 8 reminds us that we can put together some wealth, but at the end of the day, we still have to admit that it was God who allowed us and who blessed us and who enabled us to be able to build that wealth. So it all belongs to God. The fact is that when I look at the resources and the gifts of this church, and I think about how do we teach being better financially to our not yet here neighbors, I get really excited. Especially as we are here located in Delhi and in Price Hill, both of these communities that are on a kind of a declining financial demographic, where people are going to be feeling more and more and more this need to be better financially. And that this church is strategically located here to be able to offer that place of great need. I think that's amazing. But I also think we have some growing to do ourselves. At least I do. Perhaps many of you do as well. We have some growing edges, and I've always believed that we cannot teach what we do not have. We cannot lead others places we have not ourselves gone. And so today, I want to talk about one of our growing edges, and our growing edge is in that giving category. This week, one of the reasons I mention this is this week our leadership board will be meeting in a special session to discuss the possibility of a projected 2018 budget shortfall of what could be in excess of $100,000. Does that scare anybody besides me? Right? That's a little scary. And let me tell you, this comes from a lot of places, but primarily from two places. One being we've seen since the middle of this year a bit of a decline in our giving, that if we factor that out to the end of the year, we will begin to fall short. And if we project that out into 2018, we're going to have to adjust some things. We also recognize that this is the end of the blessing that we've been able to receive from our conference in our district, as they have helped support our ministry and mission in Price Hill. And so those grants go away. And so between the two of those, we're beginning to talk about what does it look like for us to move forward in ministry and mission in 2018. Let me share with you a passage that I think is just fabulous. This is from 2 Samuel chapter 24, verse 18 through 25. Here's the context of what's going on here. King David had just recently done a census of all of his fighting men. And that irritated God, because what David was doing was trying to say, how strong am I, rather than trusting God. And so there was this plague that the people were dealing with. And so the priest came to David and said, hey, here's what I want you to do. Go build an altar on the threshing floor. Tell God you're sorry, and we'll see if we can't take care of this plague. So listen to what it says. On that day, Gad went to David and said to him, go up and build an altar to the Lord on the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite. So David went up as the Lord had commanded through God. When Araunah looked and saw the king coming, his men coming toward him, he went down and bowed down before the king with his face to the ground. Araunah said, why has my lord the king come to his servant? To buy your threshing floor, David said, so I can build an altar to the Lord, that the plague on the people may be stopped. But Araunah said to David, let my lord the king take whatever pleases him and offer it up. Here are oxen for the burnt offering, and here are threshing sledges and ox yokes for the wood. O king, Araunah gives all of this to the king. Araunah also said this to him, may the Lord your God accept you. So the king comes to Araunah and says, hey, I want to buy your field so I can build an altar. Araunah says, no way, you're the king. It's yours for free. Not only that, but I'll give you the oxen, I'll give you the wood, I'll give you everything you need. And listen to what King David replies. But the king said to Araunah, no, I insist on paying you for it. I will not sacrifice to the Lord my God burnt offerings that cost me nothing. Let me say that again. I will not sacrifice to the Lord my God burnt offerings that cost me nothing. And so the story goes on that David pays for the field, he gives the offering, the plague goes away. This story reminds me that in order to receive God's blessings, we need to have some skin in the game. What David understood was that we are partners with God in the ministry and mission that God has planned. And what David said to Araunah is, I will never ask God to bless me for something I'm not invested in at all. I need to have some skin in the game. Let me share with you a few of our financial realities here at Shiloh as we talk about what better financially looks like. I believe to the core of who I am that our biggest opportunity for growth, the best way we can become better financially is through giving. Let me give you a few statistics. In 2016, we had 273 giving units give to Shiloh Church. They gave a total of $462,000. So in other words, my wife and I, we're one giving unit. If you're a single person, you're one giving unit. So you understand how that works. Giving units represent a whole lot more people than just 273. So 273 giving units gave $462,000 of the $1.2 million budget that Shiloh has. Now, I know some of you are asking, okay, Dave, how do we get the rest of the money? Where does that come from? Well, I'm glad you asked. There are a couple of places that it comes from. The first one is our preschool. Our preschool brought in about $150,000 last year, and every year they do fabulous ministry as a part of our children's ministry here. Our preschool is pretty much a financial wash since they make more than they spend, and so that's good news for us, but that's part of this $1.2 million pie. Another part is an annual gift that comes in, a $200,000 gift that comes in every year around April from the Schiff Family Foundation. And I remember my very first year here, I was told that this happened, and it's happened the same way ever since I was here. Sometime about mid-April, all of a sudden somebody walks through the door, hands me a check that says $200,000 on it, and I think, I'm not sure I've ever held a check this big before. And so that is a part of what we budget on. The other big piece of our budget is our endowment income. We've got some stocks and we've got some investments that kick off some dividends of about $377,000 a year. Currently, we use 100% of those endowment dividends as operational general fund kind of places. So those four categories really kind of make up our $1.2 million budget. Let me talk for just a minute about the offering plate piece, just that one piece. If you take 273 giving units and average it out over that, what that means is the average giver in this church gives about $1,673 per year. That's $139 a month or $32 a week. Now, if you take that and base that on a biblical tithe model of 10% of your income or 10% of your wealth, and I know not everybody does or everybody understands that, and I get that. But assuming everyone in this church were tithing, that would mean that every giving unit in this church as a family made less than $17,000 a year. Do you see the opportunity for us to be better? If you take out the top 10 givers, that average drops down to less than $1,500 a year. Now, here's how our giving broke out in 2016. This is what it looked like for us, and I want to invite you to kind of find yourself on this chart, or your family. Where are you in this chart? The far left is $1,000 or more, then it's $3,000 or more, or $5,000 or more, $7,500 or more, or $10,000 or more. And you can see the number of people who gave in each category. We're weighted pretty heavily towards the shallow end more than we are the deep end. And so we have been really focused around asking, all right, how do we put more skin in the game? How do we as a church give in a way that makes God smile? And one of the things I want to talk about is the other piece of the pie, the outside the plate giving, the endowments and the gift. Because wouldn't all of us like to have a magic pot of money that kind of shows up once a year? Wouldn't that be great? Right? Wouldn't it be amazing to have a kind of a outside of our job benefactor? And endowments and outside of the plate money are amazing, except when they're not. And let me tell you what I mean. You ever seen those shows on TV where somebody hits the lottery and then like 5 years later they're broken in jail? Right? Because they got this amazing gift, and it wasn't the gift that was the problem, but it was their ability to handle it. Our endowments, one of the unintended consequences of our endowments is that it has allowed us for years to live outside of our means, right? To be a church that is bigger than we typically could be all by ourselves, to do things we typically couldn't do, to engage in projects or in ministries that a church might be outside of our means otherwise, and to build buildings that might be too expensive for a church our size were it not for these outside the plate giving. And now hear me say, these are all really good things, right? I love this building. I love it that we built a parking lot back there. I love the ministries and missions that we've been able to do. These are all great things. But when we engage in these ministries, it's not just a one-time upfront cost, but an ongoing relationship. Be like buying a car and forgetting to factor in taxes and gas and maintenance and insurance into your budget, right? Eventually, that's going to catch up with you. And so one of the challenges is that our endowments has allowed us to get a little bigger than we could get without them. The other challenge that I want to share with you is something I've been calling giving complacency. Right? That having this extra pot of money here has allowed us not to have to give because the consequences aren't there when we don't. And so it's allowed us not to have the kind of skin in the game that we might need in order to truly be invested in the ministry and mission that God is doing. Hear me say this. I love what this church is all about. What I'm inviting you to is a deeper investment in the way God can use you. And let me tell you why. I believe to the core of who I am that money doesn't follow budgets, right? Nobody's interested in paying the light bill, making sure the heat comes on. We all like it when it does, but nobody's interested in paying for that. We want to be a part of something that's making a difference in the world. We want to be a part of a movement. We want to see our investment changing people's lives. And so we've come to the conclusion that better financially looks like all of us having more skin in the game. All of us being more committed to giving in a way that makes God smile, a deeper kind of investment. Now, I shared that with some folks earlier this week, and they were like, well, Dave, you always say this, give in a way that makes God smile, and that's fine, but I don't have a clue what that means. Give me some hard numbers. Show me in real numbers what that means. So I've got a chart here I want to show you. This chart is in real numbers wherever you found yourself on this chart earlier. If you would like to kick up to the next spot, this is what it looks like for you. So if you are in that $0 to $1,000 category, if you'd like to give $1,000 a year to Shiloh, if you believe that's what would make God smile, that's $20 a week or $83 a month. If you'd like to step up from the $1,000 to $3,000 or the $3,000 to $5,000 category, that means a $38 increase or $166 a month. And if you'd like to step up from $5,000 to $7,500 or $7,500 to $10,000, that's an increase of $48 a week or $208 a month. Have I broken that down simply enough for us in hard numbers? I've also learned that for me, giving online is one of the best ways to help me be consistent and faithful. Because here's what I know. Half the time, I have no clue where my checkbook is, right? I don't have the cash with me. I didn't bring it with me. And so if I can give online, it's that much easier for me to be faithful. I ran a few numbers, and I know not everybody is able to give in the same capacity. And so what would it look like for us to give better here at Shiloh? And here's what I've found. If we're going to step up, if we had 100 families, right now we have 129 families who are giving $1,000 or more. If we just had 100 families who were doing that, 100 families who were giving $3,000, 30 families who were giving $5,000, 30 who were giving $7,500, and 20 families who were giving $10,000 or more a year, that is $1 million through the offering plate. That's kind of exciting. And let me tell you why that matters. If we can just shift the church average from $1,700 per family to $3,500 per family, whatever that looks like for you, we could be a church that would change the world. Now, I want to talk just for a minute to our younger families, to some of our newer families here in the church, maybe some families who have been struggling with what does giving look like, what is giving all about, and why should I give through the church? I recognize that if you're my age or younger, you have no interest in giving to organizations, but you want to give to causes. You want to make a difference in the world. When you give to UMCOR, it's not because they're UMCOR, it's because they're in Puerto Rico, right? That's why you give. You want to make a difference in the world. We believe that better financially for Shiloh looks like 100% of our operational costs being paid for out of the offering plate, so that all of that extra money outside the offering plate, our endowment funds and whatever gifts we get on the side, can all be focused in mission and ministry. And church, here's the good news. At our church, that's $500,000 a year. I asked on Facebook some of my friends, if I gave you $500,000 and told you to change the world for Jesus, what would you do? And all of a sudden you start asking that question. You change the question from how do you finance the budget to what could you do if we had $500,000 to change the world? And people start dreaming. People start visioning, and people start having a purpose in life. Look at some of the responses I got from people's dreams and passions. People said, hey, you know what I'd do? I'd feed the hungry children. I would have a post-release housing for those who've been in prison. I'd make a place for children who have aged out of foster care. I'd develop support programs for people who have medical needs. I'd provide a daycare for teen unwed mothers. I'd build homes for the homeless. I'd help flood victims. I'd develop a community for people with special needs, a halfway house for addicts, a grocery store in a food desert, plant new churches or help struggling churches. I would teach job skills to people who've been rescued from human trafficking. Do you see how people start dreaming when you change the question from how do I manage the bottom line to how do I change the world with the resources God has given us? What would happen if Shiloh became a church that had $500,000 a year to send missionaries out all over the world? How cool would that be? What would happen if Shiloh had $500,000 a year to dig clean water wells in the Sudan? What would happen if Shiloh had $500,000 a year to fight child trafficking in Cambodia? What would happen if Shiloh had $500,000 a year to help rebuild Puerto Rico? What would happen if Shiloh had $500,000 a year to feed and educate children in Delhi and Price Hill? What would happen if Shiloh had $500,000 a year to fight the opioid epidemic that is destroying our communities? What would happen if Shiloh invested $500,000 a year to help people transition from incarceration to community? What would happen if Shiloh invested $500,000 a year helping people come to the realization that life is better with Jesus? Church, that's the church I want to go to. That's the church I want to be a part of. And so today's message, it's not really about the budget. We're going to have budget conversations, and we'll make those hard decisions, and we'll do those things. This isn't about the budget. This is about us saying, God, what does it look like for me to have skin in the game? I recognize that as a 45-year-old young person, yeah, I said 45-year-old young person. Yes, young, that's right, claiming it. As a 45-year-old young person, I stand here today on the shoulders of giants. I stand on the shoulders of giants who 200 years ago dreamed about a church called Shiloh as they met in somebody's living room. I stand on the shoulders of giants who invested their time, talents, and resources to build, to grow, to invite this place. I stand here on the shoulders of giants who blood, sweat, and tears poured their life into God's mission through this church. May it never be that I receive that blessing and pay nothing for it. May it never be that I ask God to bless me and don't have skin in the game. I'd like to invite you to stand for a closing blessing. Since the time of Adam and Eve, God has been reaching out to God's people. God has been building into them the heart that is aligned with God's heart. God has been offering us the opportunity. Today, we stand on the shoulders of giants. Today, we receive the blessing of the skin in the game that others have put in. The question I'm leaving with you today is, what does it look like for you to give in a way that makes God smile? October 22nd is Commitment Sunday, and so we're going to be inviting you to bring your commitment cards on October 22nd back with you. If you have any questions about church finances, where does our money go, how does it get spent, how does it get used, anything like that, there's a couple of email addresses in your bulletin. I want to invite you to fire out or call the church office. We would love to chat with you about that. Now may the God who created you, the God who formed you in his image and made you his masterpiece, may the God who breathed into you the breath of life go with you and be with you always. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. God bless you. I love you because Jesus loves you, church. Go in peace.